Hi, I'm Rachel, and last week I was across the country in San Diego getting my geekness up for the San Diego Comic-Con, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Comic-Con and sci-fi fantasy conventions in the world. And before I left, I promised that I would try to film to give a experiential view of what it's like. Be fair warned, though, I'm not the best vlogger in the best of circumstances, let alone when I'm being jostled by thousands of people, but I put together a little something something, and I hope you like it, to give a feel of what it is to be there in that big convention. And I end it with some still photos that I took in the exhibition hall of various book booths, because all of the big publishers were there, and then also a local sci-fi fantasy bookstore and the library. So this is a booktube tinted, San Diego Comic-Con video, so I wanted to put in a little bit of that, which also would lead into clips that I took from some of the panels that I went to, and the majority of the panels I went to were about sci-fi fantasy books. And I took a little bit of footage of my three favorite authors who are writing young adult fantasy series right now, because I'm counting the Conqueror's Saga as fantasy, as I've said before. So sit back and relax and enjoy these next 12 and a half roughly minutes, and action!
think doing these dramatic reversals adds to the story or gives to the reader?
Yes, lay out those 6 days for us.
Yeah. No, the Anna Dark books were a lot longer than 6 days. Just like snuttering. No, just kidding. Those took like a year each, okay? So much research. So the idea for Anna Dark always centered around Lana because it wasn't a story to me until I was like, because I knew all the history, Vlad the Impaler, who was also Vlad Dracul, who is the historical Romanian prince and notoriously violent. He inspired Dracula. The book, there's no real Dracula, I'm sorry. He was a contemporary of Mehmed the Conqueror, who was the Ottoman Sultan, who at the age of 21 overthrew Constantinople. They grew up together. Vlad was a political prisoner in Mehmed's court, and they were just so dynamic and so interesting and so brutal. And as I think about them in their history, as well as Vlad's brother Radu, who had a polar opposite reaction to their childhood, even though they had gone through the same things, I was thinking about what it would take for a person to be that dynamic, but also that stubborn, and just his utter refusal to ever back down. And I thought it would make more sense if he had been a girl. Because, you know, women have to work harder, we have to, just to be on a level playing field, we have to do more at every single stage, and it's even more if you're a woman of color, or not cisgender. And, you know, historically it was pretty bad. And so once I got the idea for Lana, that's when it became a story for me. But it was really interesting writing her because I kept finding myself wanting to soften her because I was afraid of the reaction because I'd had an angry narrator in a book before and they responded very poorly to her. They did not like that she was angry. They thought she should be nicer. And so I kept kind of trying to think like, well, maybe Lana really likes horses. Maybe she's super nice to animals and that's like but she doesn't care, you guys. She doesn't care. Also, horses are terrifying. I could not find it in me to write positively about horses. They're just all teeth and hooves, and like, you can fit your shoulder in your mouth, don't.
I just bought a horse, Kirsten.
No, we're not going to talk about that. And so it was really, so it was a very interesting process for me, looking at this character and saying, if I strip away everything that I feel like I should do, or the reactions that I feel like I should have as a woman, what is left? What would she actually be made of? How would she actually feel about these things? And I had the opposite reaction of your friend, in that my editor never asked me to pull her back. All she ever wanted was to make sure that these things that Lana was doing were supported within the narrative. So she was never being violent just to be violent. It had to build to it. There had to be a reason for her to make that choice because she's not dumb. She's not going to do it just for kicks and giggles. I hope you never slaughter a room full of nobles just for fun. Have a reason to do it. Just don't do it. Actually, just don't. And so yeah, it was a very conscious process of mine. But also, like in the middle grade, I just really like being subversive. That's when I have the most fun when I'm writing. When I feel like I'm getting away with something. Which again, like when I was like, I'm gonna write a gender swap Vlad the Impaler because no one wants to read that. I make really good career decisions. Or like with a fairy tale, like kind of toying with those tropes and sort of subverting them. And you know, in some of them I was able to actually examine the stories for what the building blocks were, like Little Red Riding Hood is all about being submissive and not being sexually active. And so being able to sort of address those in a very middle grade appropriate way. I promise, I'm a mom. My kids are mostly well adjusted. No, my 5-year-old has a girlfriend named Ice Cream. She's a skeleton. Sometimes I wonder what my house cleaners think when they come in my 4-year-old's room. It's like literally filled with skeletons. Anyways, they're really healthy children. But yeah, like for me, it comes about subverting expectations because that's when I have the most fun as a writer. So.
I think, you know, when we think, a lot of us, our first thought when we think of fantasy is like the trappings of fantasy, the magic, the dragons, all that cool stuff. But, you know, what I think we get out of fantasy, what we need out of fantasy, and have always needed since like the beginning of story, is something so much deeper and profound than that. And, you know, I could go on about that, but I won't. But, you know, I think it really satisfies something in us that we really need. And these are story tropes and situations that enable us to feel less powerless than we do in our daily lives. And but I also react to, and I think when I start a story, like I look at the exciting trappings that I want to write for fun, and then as I'm writing it, all the things that I worry about and think about, all these themes that are just going to come out when I write, they do. And so sometimes I don't even know when I start. Like my new series, Strange the Dreamer, came out last year, and the sequel, Music Nightmares, is coming out. And if you come to the signing after, there will be some arcs. So I encourage you, I think, so. Yes. And one of the things that emerged that I didn't really realize when I was writing it, it's such a story about trauma and surviving trauma. And even when I set out to write a story that's a fun fantasy story with all these cool things, it's about a lost city and the left behind children of murdered gods. But it ended up being a story really that was about, like, can we save a child who was absolutely formed by severe, profound childhood trauma? Can she be saved? And can she is there a way that people can let go of that hate and break the cycle of vengeance that traps us in these endless, cycles of conflict? And I did not know when I set out, but like all the things that I worry about in the world just go into it as I'm writing, and then as I recognize it, I can refine it and tie it all together.
So the characters in Ember don't really start off with magic. They just start off with a lot of pain. And as the series goes on, magic is something that comes to a few of them, and it only brings trouble. And the goal there was sort of to show that even when you think that this stuff is going to solve your problems, it's not going to. You still have to solve them yourself. And so as the series goes on, we have more characters sort of encountering this magic, because in the series, magic is being woken up as the books go on. So in the fourth book, it's sort of, I think, all going to come to a head, but I don't want to spoil, so I'll stop talking now.
Okay, I did in fact also go to an adult sci-fi and fantasy panel as put on by Del Rey Books. I wasn't really able to film it, I didn't have a great spot, and my battery was running low, and yada yada, excuses, but I'll post a picture up here as my proof that I was there, and I'll read off the names of who was in attendance. We have Catherine Arden of the Winter Night trilogy, Pierce Brown of the Red Rising series, Delilah S. Dawson, who wrote Kill the Farm Boy, which I believe is Star Wars fiction, Christy Golden of the World of Warcraft Before the Storm, Kevin Hearn, who also wrote Kill the Farm Boy, Sylvain Nouvelle, who wrote the Themis Files, or is writing them. I believe the first book in that is Sleeping Giants. Naomi Novik, whose most recent book is Spinning Silver, and they were in discussion with their editor from Del Rey. And it was a fun panel, very informative and lighthearted, and if you want to know, out of all the panels I went to of YA versus this adult sci-fi fantasy panel, who was talking the most about poop jokes, it was the adult panel. I have a tough time with adult science fiction and fantasy, tougher than I'd like. With YA fantasy, I just have a soft spot. It's like my fun escape route into epic YA fantasy, but I guess for adult sci-fi and fantasy, I suppose I expect a little bit more than what I'd get in YA, and so I've had trouble reading in bulk out of adult science fiction and fantasy. However, one of the reasons I went to the Del Rey panel is because I recently learned that Spinning Silver, which is Naomi Novik's adult fairy tale retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, is a Jewish retelling. She imagines the spinner moneylender family as a Jewish family based on her father's familial history. And I found that very intriguing because I do love Jewish fiction, and I've always kind of thought of Rumpelstiltskin in an anti-Semitic light. You know, there's traits that he has that align to anti-Semitic thoughts from medieval Europe, like, you know, the short, dwarfish-looking, alien-looking goblin, and that he's obsessed with money and has a weird to pronounce name, and that he's always trying to swindle goodly Christians out of their wares. So I'm under the impression that the Brothers Grimm actually have far more overt anti-Semitic fairy tales than Rumpelstiltskin, which isn't entirely like on the level anti-Semitic. But I still thought it was intriguing that Naomi Novik decided to do her Rumpelstiltskin retelling with a Jewish family. So that is an adult fantasy novel that I am definitely interested in reading. As for adult science fiction, I feel like I both desperately want to read more of it, but I'm also much more picky about what I like in science fiction. Like, I don't really like military stuff, and so much spacefaring science fiction is about military organizations going out and exploring, and I'd rather look into civilians going out and exploring space, and a lot of the Earth-based science fiction really isn't to my liking. I really don't like zombies all that much, and I'm kind of iffy on robots. It depends. I really like the spacefaring stuff, but then I'm picky about who gets to go to space. I don't know. I'm probably way too picky. But, you know, of all the panels at Comic-Con that involved writers speaking, there were also editors speaking about forthcoming books, so I made sure to take some notes about some adult science fiction that looked interesting to me. So I'll leave a list up here, and in case you've come to this video wondering what adult science fiction spacefaring books are coming out soon, this is the part for you. But really, I don't need to be thinking about more books to read, because I went to a convention where I went to a lot of book panels where they offered me free books, so I should just read the ones that I got, really. And in fact, I'm planning to make some videos during Sci-Fi September, or maybe sooner, where I go through some of those books and pamphlets of upcoming books and talk about them. And in my next video, it'll be my July book haul, and most of that will, of course, be given up to Comic-Con books, so look forward to that in a couple of days. In the meantime, I'm sure this video's gone on long enough. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.